Jira and one of our lead Jira architects, Matt Coyle, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes, my name's Matt Quayle, and I have been in Atlassian for quite a long time. Today, I want to talk to you about this, building with Jira and its REST and Webhook APIs. Jira may already be a good tool in your belt, but today I want to lift the veil on what's possible with the REST APIs, and I hope you'll never look at your Jira server the same way again. Building with Jira. Well, what is Jira? What is Jira? What is Jira? I have an architect's perspective on this. For me, this is what Jira is. Jira is issue, workflow, fields, and search. Issues. Issue is the core object inside Jira. Jira is an issue tracker. Workflows. Workflows add behavior, a sense of motion through time. Fields. Fields add state, data, information that you want to capture with your issue. And search. For me, search is the ability to query, partition, categorize, and report over your issues. If you're going to be building something on top of Jira, you're building on top of these four things. Everything in Jira is built on top of this. Dashboards, reports, Jira Agile, Service Desk, and a marketplace full of add-ons are all built on top of these concepts. And because these concepts are configurable, when you configure these concepts in Jira, you're kind of building with Jira already. Your Jira is probably different to my Jira. Building with Jira, I want to give you an example of what I mean by building with Jira, by talking about how Atlassian uses Jira internally. One of the things we like to do at Atlassian is employ people. As a matter of fact, we like to employ people quite a bit. And one of the things we have to do when a new person comes on board is the sysadmin staff have to get a computer for them, configure it, create accounts in all the appropriate systems, and then put that computer at the right desk. Now, when you get a couple of people on every month, you can kind of keep track of your to-do list for setting up a new employee. But as Atlassian grew, that became more and more a problem that our sysadmin guys just couldn't handle by themselves by keeping information in their head. Now, these guys, they already use Jira. They use Jira as, they've got a Jira instance, and of course they use it for their general IT support desk stuff. In fact, now they're using Service Desk, and they're loving it. They also use it for their IT projects, big IT projects that they have. And of course, when a new person comes on board, they wanted to manage that process with their Jira instance as well. Now, our HR department, they already use this other third-party system for keeping track of employee records. So they know about new hires, they know when that new hire has started, and they know in what team that hire is going to be running in. So what our sysadmin guys did is write a script. It talks to the HR system and then creates issues in Jira for every new employee that's going to be coming on board. So what happens now is this. When a new employee goes into the system, this script will create an issue in Jira. It will assign it to the manager because it knows who the manager is going to be. It sets a due date. The due date is when that employee is going to start. And it adds a comment to that issue, saying to the manager, here are the things the sysadmin guys need from you before we can get rolling. We need to know where they're going to sit. We need to know what sort of computer they've asked for. Did they ask for a Mac or one of the other types of computers? And because it's a comment and because it's been assigned to the manager, what happens? They get an email notification. And just that simple email notification starts quite an effective collaboration between the new manager, the sysadmin guys, and HR. And hopefully, by managing these things in Jira, we'll be ready when the new employee arrives. And often it comes down to the line because we can never decide where someone's going to sit. But eventually, everything is ready, and we know everything is ready because we're using Jira and we have an issue. And we can use Jira to help us manage this. So we've got a dashboard. It lists, sorted by the due date, all the people that are coming on board. We have an activity stream that lets us know how much work we've been doing. We can have reports that tell us how many new people are coming aboard and how much ahead or behind the curve we are in getting things ready. And because there's often quite a bit of work involved in doing this, we have a couple of hours, maybe from several different staff. We use Jira Agile to manage and assign work to people. And all this comes from because we offered Jira an issue. Issue, workflow, fields, and search. The sysadmin guys built something hugely valuable to them simply by writing a script that gave Jira an issue. So that's what I mean by building things with Jira. If you have something that needs a little bit of task tracking or workflow or visibility or notifications, Jira is a great home for that concept. So how easy is it to build things with Jira? So I should say there are many ways to build things with Jira. We have our traditional plugin system, and we have our new Atlassian Connect add-on system. But I want to go a little bit simpler than that. And today I want to talk about our REST and Webhook APIs by just staying within my browser, something very familiar. And to start with, I'm going to talk about Jira's REST API. Now, what is REST? That word REST, what does it mean? It means something very wonderful that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about. Instead, I just want to explore it, go on a bit of a journey through Jira's REST API via my browser. So here we have an issue, probably something you're very familiar with. And at the top there, in the browser's address bar, we've got the URL to the issue. There's the issue mentioned there. That's how our browser shows us an issue. The browser will make a HTTP request to Jira, and Jira will return the view of this issue. Now, if I change that URL slightly in my browser's address bar, all of a sudden I've accessed the REST version of this issue. This is a data-oriented view of an issue, something that a program can easily access and understand. And it's just around the corner. It's just around the corner from within your browser. So that's, and just, there's no smoke and mirrors here. We actually pulled up an issue. You can see the summary, you can see all the fields. All the data is there. In fact, the surface area of Jira's REST API is massive. You can get access to quite a lot. So here's another example. This is search results. This is the REST view of a search. And if we look up the URL there, you can just type it into your browser. The JQL is, I'm looking for all things in the demo project, and I just want to view the summary. Don't show me a million fields, just show me the summary. And if you want to get data out of Jira, you can get it out of your address bar. Projects, issue types, all the things, permissions, notification schemes, all that you can access. You can get information out of Jira just by going into your browser's address bar, because it's just around the corner. But I want to do something a bit more than getting data out of Jira, because Jira's REST API allows you to push data into Jira as well. I can't do that with the address bar, but I want to stay in the browser. So what I'm going to do is use a Chrome extension called Postman, and there are a lot of Chrome extensions like this. They allow you to make slightly more sophisticated HTTP calls. And what it allows me to do is put in the URL that I would have put in the address bar and do some further modifications to the HTTP request I want to do. So I've got my URL to my issue, and so I want to put some data in there. And I want to update the summary of this issue. So I need to give it a little payload to Jira to tell Jira what I want to do. And I put that in there. If I press the send button, away we go. Jira tells me, yes, that worked, well done. Let's have a look at what's going on here. Very simple instruction. Oh, I've got an issue, has fields. That field's the summary, I want to update it. Quite simple, but this is a very sophisticated API. It's just a surface. For example, at the same time as updating the summary, I can add a label and add a comment. It's a very powerful API, Jira's REST API. And here's the proof. This issue has now been updated. So from your browser, you can get all this information out of Jira. That shows, I think, quite how simple Jira's REST API is. You don't need a lot of tooling just to play around. I want to do another more complicated example. I want to update multiple issues at once. I can't do that in Postman, because what I need to do is write a little program. I need a loop and I need some logic. I want to stay in the browser. So I'm going to use Chrome's JavaScript console. If I bring that up, I can write a little JavaScript program. And if I execute that, I get some results. I'll show you what this code is doing. What I want to do is just execute a search and print out some results. I'm doing this because I want to build up an example that allows me to do a search, get those search results, and then update something about that issue. I want to add a triage label to every issue that matched. I don't want to go into the details of the JavaScript too much, but I just want to point out the highlights of how things are working. I've got the URL to my search that I want to do, and I'm printing out some results to this console log. And you can see the results get printed out. There are 6 issues that match. One of them I've expanded out there. So this is the search just in Jira's user interface. We have 6 results matched, and we can see what their current labels are. Most of them don't have a label. One of them is already triaged, and this other issue has 2 other labels. I want to extend that little search JavaScript I wrote before and update all of those issues. And if I run that script, I've done it. You can see they're all now triaged, and that project that had that issue that had 2 labels has got another one. Let's look at this code in a bit more detail. Here's my search like I had before. What do I want to do with each result? I want to send it this little payload, tell it to update and add this triage label. And I do that by, for each issue, doing a put to the issue's URL. I guess, I don't know, maybe this is an easy example as well. And in fact, this is something you can do in Jira's user interface yourself. You can go into the bulk change UI and go and add labels yourself. But I want to underline something here, that Jira's REST API is not just all the things you can do in the user interface already. It's actually a deep and powerful and comprehensive API below Jira that's really ready for business. In fact, it actually surpasses some of the limitations of the user interface. If you've ever done a bulk change and tried to add a label, you end up with a form that looks like this. And you get this little warning, and it says, this will remove any previous labels. Because what happens if you try and add a new label, it'll destructively remove all the previous labels and add your new one. Whereas with the REST API, we could do much more sophisticated things. Jira's API is really ready for business. Space slide. This is a point in my presentation where I get to do a space slide. Space slides are cool. There's this saying in the space industry that once you're in orbit, you're halfway to anywhere. And I want to say a similar thing about Jira's REST API. Once you understand it's there, how close it is, how accessible it is, you're already halfway to building with Jira. Now I want to go on to talk about webhooks, and I want to explain what webhooks are. We've already talked about REST, and REST is when our code talks to Jira. Webhooks reverses that, inverts that, and allows Jira to talk back to our program. In Jira, a webhook, or in the Atlassian suite of tools, a webhook is when Jira, the product, makes a HTTP call to your program as a notification in response to something. For example, and this can be quite valuable when you're writing integrations with Jira. You might want to be quite responsive. An issue might come in, it might be high priority, and you might have some really reactive response to that issue. Webhooks allow you to do that. Now, what we've been doing so far in these examples is using our browser to talk to Jira. But it's quite difficult to get Jira to talk to our browser in a technical sense. But I still want to stay in the browser. What I'm going to do is use this website called Request Bin. Now, this is a site that if I create a little bin, it'll give me this unique URL. And for a limited time, anything that goes into that URL, the website will maintain for me, and I can go inspect it later. Once you have a URL that can receive a HTTP request, webhooks are fairly straightforward. For example, if I go into Jira's admin screen, I can manually create a webhook from the user interface. All that means is taking that URL that can receive HTTP requests and putting it in there. And what I end up with is a webhook that will receive a request whenever any issue is updated in Jira. But you can constrain it. For example, I could have constrained it to particular issues by using a JQL query, or particular event types, like I might just be interested in created events or comment events. Or I can even attach this webhook to particular transitions in particular workflows. Now, this is how you manually create a webhook via the user interface. But of course, in Jira, we have a REST API for creating webhooks as well. So if you're writing a program, it can add its own webhooks into Jira. And just to show that, I've gone back into Postman, and this is the REST request I need to make to create a webhook. And once I've done that, you can see, yes, I did, in fact, programmatically create a webhook. This will be a cross-product API in Atlassian, and this is what this API looks at. I can go to it, see the REST request that I programmatically added, in fact, see all the REST requests, all the webhooks that have been added, and maintain them via REST if I wanted to. So let's see what happens if I edit the summary of an issue. Tab back to request bin, and I can see I got something. If I format that a little bit better, what we can see, probably just out the top of the screen, is a timestamp and the type of event that came into this request, the user that caused the action to be performed, a change log, which is what actually changed, what the old value was and what the new value is, and the actual current new full details of the issue. So this means I could write a program receiving one of these. I could look at the state of the issue, see that, oh, it's a newly created high priority issue. My program might do something else in another system or send an alert or something like that. So REST, Jira's REST API has this massive surface area. Whereas what I've just shown you with webhooks, actually that's kind of it. Webhooks are actually quite simple. There's not many more technical details to webhooks other than what I've shown you now. But that's not to sell them short. There is a lot of power if you can write an integration with Jira that is responsive to what is happening within Jira. I want to show a bit of an example of webhooks by talking about Atlassian sysadmin team again. This is something they're thinking of doing. They're sort of writing some code at the moment. They've been using Service Desk for a while, internally dogfooding it. They love it. In fact, if you want to hear about how much they love it, there's a talk, I think, tomorrow morning where some of Atlassian sysadmin guys are doing a panel about Service Desk. So I recommend you go to that if you want to know more about how Service Desk has been helping Atlassian sysadmin guys. One of the reasons they love it is because it allows them to gather a lot of information when someone's making a request. This is really valuable because often it means they don't need to have this to and fro asking, oh, did you mean this or what do you mean? They can actually get a request, see what it means, service it, and finish it really quickly. And in fact, for some requests, that's a lot of Atlassians making a lot of requests and our poor overloaded sysadmin staff doing a lot of work. But for some requests, enough information has been captured that we could actually automatically action this issue and just close it off. So what they've done, or they're playing with at the moment, is writing a little app that receives web requests, webhooks out of Jira, automatically detect if they're automatically actionable, do the appropriate work, and then close off the issue. And one thing to note here is that they were able to do all this when using Service Desk, because Service Desk is built on top of Jira, built on top of the Jira platform. That means it automatically gets issues, workflow, fields, and search. It automatically gets REST and webhooks. Everything built on top of Jira is built on top of these things, and you get all the power that the Jira platform has provided. So let's do a little bit of a review. I think Jira's REST API, it's really just around the corner, and we've shown that by using our browser. We could actually just go into our browser's address bar, make requests, get all the data out of Jira in a programmatic way. We could use something like Postman to make slightly more sophisticated REST requests and push data into Jira. We can even use JavaScript in the JavaScript console and make more sophisticated programs that change state in Jira. And we could even use another website to help us receive webhooks. Now that's great for a demo. Staying in the browser is great for a demo. But that's not how you write an integration with Jira. What you would do is you would have a program. like our sysadmin guys do, that talks to Jira, maybe talks to other systems. But then to receive webhooks, it's not enough just to have a little bit of a program. That program needs to be a web app. It needs to be able to receive HTTP requests itself. And as soon as you have a web app, some interesting things can start to happen. Because when you're a web app, you can become an Atlassian Connect application. That opens a whole new door beyond REST and webhooks for integrating with Jira. An Atlassian Connect application has a first-class presence inside Jira, as well as using the REST and the webhooks that any script or code could. You can augment Jira's user interface, provide rich integrations to your users through the user interface. And if you're so inclined, once you have an Atlassian Connect app, that's your entry into Atlassian's marketplace. If you're interested in Atlassian Connect, if that sounds interesting, especially if you're interested in Atlassian Marketplace, there's a couple of talks today and tomorrow that I recommend you go to. There's one today, the Ecosystem State of the Union. That's going to be really interesting. That's later this afternoon. Seb Ruiz is also doing a talk with On-Demand Atlassian Connect. If you've written an Atlassian Connect application, this is now an extension and an integration that will work in Atlassian On-Demand. He will be talking about that. And tomorrow there's a great panel in the afternoon about Atlassian Connect. Building things with Jira. Issues, workflow, fields, and search. REST and webhooks. Atlassian Connect. These are a bunch of technologies that allow you to build on top of the Jira platform. Building on top of the Jira platform is an awesome thing to do. And it's just around the corner. You could be building things with Jira. Thank you. And I think we've got mics for questions, if anyone has any questions. Yep.
So can you talk a bit more about Connect? So is it a standalone web app? Is it a plugin?
No, so Connect is, a Connect app is any web app built into any technology that provides a descriptor to, say, Jira, and Jira can then integrate and install with that Connect app. So the Connect technology is agnostic to the way that web app was implemented. Yep. So you could use whatever you want.
Is Service Desk a Connect app?
No, Service Desk is, so it's implemented with a wide variety of things, mostly using the traditional plugin to, the traditional way to write Atlassian plugins. But it's also integrated into Jira in other ways. Next, somewhere.
You talked a lot about the REST API, and you didn't mention anything about SOAP. I'm actually interested in creating users on the fly. We have a gigantic installation, and it really would get us out of the business of creating users individually.
Yep.
So I'm really interested in that. However, from what I understand, it's all SOAP right now, and it's not REST yet. I want to know when that's coming, or what I can do in the interim to do that.
What's
without
the story with
actually,
that?
you know, I need to know that.
Yep. So SOAP, Jira has a SOAP and XML RPC API. They were its original web-based APIs. For a long time, the SOAP API had mostly more features than the REST API. The original REST API in its first incarnation was just more interested with the issues and didn't do much about administration like users or adding or configuring projects or anything like that. That is now changing. In Jira 6.1, I would say 80 to 90% of those holes have been plugged. So anything you could do with the SOAP API, I would say 80 to 90% of it is now in 6.1. I don't think user management is, but it's on our roadmap. We want to delete the SOAP API, and we will not until we have replaced all its functionality. When, I will not comment on timeframes, etc. We would love to have to do that by 7.0. That's when I would like to say that SOAP can now go away, because everything you can do with SOAP, you can do better in REST. That will have to remain as a when answer. Yep, got one over here.
How robust is the webhook stuff? Is that sort of a one-shot deal?
Yeah, so what we have at the moment is one shot. That's not always awesome because there just may be a network problem and the message will be dropped, or the server we're trying to talk to may be being rebooted and that message will be dropped. So there will be dropped messages naturally with this mechanism. We don't know what we're going to do with that, whether we embrace unreliability and recommend that you use webhooks for reactive, low latency response, but couple that with polling for reliability. So you might react instantly when an issue is created, but every 10 minutes you might do a JQL search to get all the newly created issues and just match them up. That's what I would recommend today. That's actually a good web strategy because things actually go down anyway all the time. Things get dropped. You can't have 100% reliability, but you can have high reliability and low latency by mixing two things. So that would be our recommendation at the moment.
Thank you.
Yep, just over here.
You mentioned enhancing user experience. Are there code samples available on the developer code base?
So yes, there are. In fact, if you look at most of the traditional plugin to examples that talk about adding web panels or adding sections to Jira's user interface, they exist in Atlassian Connect. So I think, like I said, one of the most important things about Jira is issues and the view issue page. And if you're integrating with Jira and you're not have any impact on the view issue page, you're probably not probably have much to do with issues. So you can do a lot on the view issue page. You can add panels, which if you saw the keynote today, Service Desk adds that SLA panel. That's the kind of thing you want to do when you augment Jira's user interface. So you can put panels on the view issue page, on project pages, and many of those types of things. Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking more in terms of the dashboard. Our users are requesting more and more custom reports based on who they log in as.
Yep.
And there are we haven't seen many plugins on the marketplace which allow us to customize. So if we were try to build some kind of dashboard that we can dashboard UI that we can build on top of Jira.
So there's two parts to that. There is you can change and create dashboards from a REST API. So you can actually create a new one and write a program to add the gadgets that you want there. But you can also write your own gadgets, and that's something you can do today as well already. Yep.
Hey, how do you deal with authentication schemes with the APIs?
Yep, so for the REST API incoming requests, the reason it worked from our browser is because our browser's adding the cookies. So that works. Any authentication mechanism you would normally use into Jira, user interface will work via the REST API. But we also support OAuth and basic auth. And additionally, if you're using if you've got a link between two Atlassian apps like Confluence and Jira, and you've written say a Confluence plugin, you can use that app link to make authenticated requests. That uses OAuth underneath, but that's another way to make authenticated requests. Or if you have an SSO integration, basically the way it works is this: it's just HTTP. If you've given Jira the HTTP request that has your authenticated credentials, you're into REST as an authenticated user. In webhooks, at the moment, they are sent out with no real authentication information, but I think Atlassian Connect is adding signatures to that so that the receiving web app can verify that it came from a particular Jira instance. Does that answer your question? Yep. Yep.
Basic question on where we can get more information.
Yep, the developer.atlassian.com. Yep, is awesome. Yep.
Hi, just
Hey.
on the webhooks being one shot, is that logged anywhere? Like, can we trace back that webhook fired, and then, if we didn't get it?
No, it's really unreliable. All the types of unreliable.
That makes me
Yep.
sad.
Yeah. So, like I said, the solution today is to mix the polling and the webhooks. We know it's a problem. We're trying to come up with something better. Yep.
So back to authentication.
Yep.
Say I'm writing a script that I'm going to pass off to somebody else, and certainly we're not going to be wanting to put our credentials in plain text
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
What solutions do you propose to?
Yeah, the easiest way, easiest. The easiest way to do that is to configure, use OAuth. So usually from most scripting languages, there's an OAuth library there, and you can go into Jira, you have to create a generic app link, but an app link, you're creating a link between Jira and your script, and that is where you can find the OAuth keys that you need to give to your script, and then make those requests.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Does our script need to somehow accept that application link? In
No,
some
so
way,
that's
or?
you do that in the UI, and then you cut and paste some things, and yep.
At the end of your talk, you mentioned that something was just around the corner. Does that mean it's available now?
Yes,
Or?
so everything I showed you is in Jira 6.1, and much of it is in earlier versions.
Okay, we weren't sure if that was Australian for.
No,
Cool.
it's not Australian. It's me for trying to hint that how accessible it is, how close it is to you. Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't hinting at marvelous things that I'm not going to tell you about yet.
Okay. And one other question is on data validation. So one of the issues that I have right now is if I'm trying to do an import and something doesn't exist, it's a feature that it's created,
Yep.
which is not something I want. Is there any kind of a data validation feature on the REST APIs that would prevent, for instance, a new user or new component from being created because of a misspelling or something?
Yeah, so
like
if you
that?
tried to, so in those examples where I added a label, I could have added a component, just gone component : add foo. If foo wasn't a valid component, that would have been a validation error.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Behind the poster.
Yep.
Are there any plans with the REST API to add the ability to turn off email notifications when you're doing bulk updates?
It's not in there at the moment, but that's a good one. The sending of notifications is very interesting because that's a problem Service Desk ran into. They wanted to have notifications, but the email that goes to those customers requesting things, they don't want that to be the full Jira issue. So notification, the sort of programmatic control of notifications, something that we are aware of is a problem. Yeah. But no, there's not at the moment. You could configure your notification scheme to do some of that.
So say you're writing a plugin.
Sorry, can we have this guy over here? Yep, thanks.
So Jira plugins, do you recommend using REST APIs from within plugins?
So a traditional plugin, if you're writing a plugin that, even Atlassian Connect or a traditional plugin that's in the user interface and you're running JavaScript, you should be using the REST APIs to do things. But if you're in server-side code in Java, no. You would, all the REST APIs have equivalent Java services. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if you're in the server-side code,
Yep.
just use the server-side
Absolutely,
classes.
they match each other. Yep. Do we have? Yep, one over this side.
Yeah. How complete is the REST API for configuring Jira?
Yeah, pretty good. Not 100%. Some project details aren't there. A lot of the schemes, issue type schemes, custom field, certain types of custom field option configuration, not all of those are in there today in 6.1. Those are the things we want to cover when we get to 7.
So will you get to a point where it's complete?
Yeah, absolutely. That is totally our goal. Yep.
Great, thanks.
Yes, configuring custom fields, adding custom fields, changing their options, what schemes they're associated with, what issues they'll show up on. Yep. The way we're forcing ourselves to do that is as we update the admin user interface, it has to use the REST API. Good way of forcing yourself to eat your own dog food. Yep.
How do I add OAuth credentials that aren't tied to a linked application?
Good question. I'm going to have to look up the answer to that. I can, if you ask that question on answers@atlassian.com, I'll answer it.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out.